What if you could find brand new worlds right here on Earth, where anything is possible? Same planet, different dimension. I found the gateway.
The Rewatch podcast presents the Sliders Rewatch, dedicated to the series Sliders on Fox and Sci-Fi Channel. Join us each week as we continue crossing the Einstein-Rosen-Podolsky Bridge and find ourselves in strange new worlds. Email your thoughts on each episode to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast or on Twitter @rewatchpod.
And welcome back to the Rewatch podcast and our Sliders Rewatch. I'm Cory.
And I want you to live in me. You like that? What a way to start an episode.
I almost thought you were going to crawl up on the bar and try to seduce me in your opening. I'm glad you went with... Okay, well, thank you for joining us, everyone. And of course, we are here discussing two more episodes of Sliders this week. It is The Breeder and Stoker. All right, well, getting into our first episode today, The Breeder, written by Leah Horwitz, directed by Paris Barclay. This originally aired on March 14th of 1997.
Another 3 degrees, her body temperature will be back to normal.
You know much about this stuff, Kibbo?
Not nearly enough. Our world has barely scratched the surface of cryogenics.
Over here, we did a CAT scan and took some x-rays, and everything turned up normal except for something we can't identify in her stomach. Now, as you can see, her stomach is empty except for this solid object right there.
Sure that isn't just something she ate?
Well, if the object were ordinary food, it would have been digested by now. Let me show you this other x-ray. This was taken just 5 minutes after the first one. Now, as you can see, this object has doubled in size during that time.
We begin with our sliders trekking through a tropical jungle, being attacked by flying jelly-like creatures, one of which lands right on Maggie's face. Quinn gets it off, but after sliding, Maggie collapses, a green, foamy liquid coming from her mouth. In this medically advanced world, there is a mandatory donor program, and the sick and injured are frozen in order to prevent further damage or infection until treatment can be started. A doctor shows several x-rays of something growing within Maggie's stomach. Maggie awakens and escapes from the hospital. Shortly after finding her nearby, Quinn and Wade are arrested and taken in for not having a donor chip on their arm, customary on this world for people under 25. Meanwhile, Remy and Maggie get a hotel room and attempt to find their friends, but Maggie is more interested in getting a little closer to Remy, turning up the heat literally and figuratively. Remy balks at her advances, and she flashes her new green scaly eyes, opens her mouth, and she reveals an insect-like maw, leaping at Remy, missing him as he dodges, causing Maggie to crash through the window and attach herself to the wall outside using newfound abilities. Remy reunites with Quinn and Wade, and the doctor explains that the egg in Maggie is replicating quickly and somehow mimicking the DNA of the host, and because of that, the doctor finds it valuable and wants to capture it. With the knowledge that the creature is looking for men to incubate its eggs, they begin searching for Maggie, who has changed outfits into something more revealing and has gone on a myriad of adventures to find the right man to lay her eggs in. Meanwhile, the doctor reveals that she really wants the symbiote captured so they can learn how it replicates DNA, hoping to use that information to eventually get rid of the donor program. Being the person to discover that new technique would be a lucrative solution, and the doctor is determined to get the symbiote at all costs, even activating Wade's donor tag early and using her as a bargaining chip to get Quinn to give her Maggie. Quinn and Remy manage to catch up with Maggie and overpower her, bringing her back to the doctor. They lure the symbiote out using extreme cold, along with Quinn's soothing warm words of, "Come live in me." But before they contain the creature, it escapes. The creature attacks the doctor and takes over as host while our sliders slide, unable to help, and they leave a world behind that is headed towards doom, about to be overrun by the symbiote and its spawn.
What do you want?
I want to touch you.
Why?
I like you. Don't worry. I won't bite.
Hey, where you going?
You're not right.
What is this? Some kind of sick joke you play on people, huh? Come on. What do you say, you and me go someplace we can be alone, huh?
No.
Hey! What's the matter, babe? You like the feel in my chest there, huh? Let's see how you like it.
I said no.
All right, so let's get into some trivia here.
All right, not too much for this episode. Actually, not too much for both of these episodes. Originally, this script was written a while ago, and it was supposed to have Professor Arturo as the host. He was the one who was supposed to have the alien within him. I don't know.
Getting all hot and sexy, Arturo.
Yeah, I don't exactly know how it was going to go. I imagine it was a much different episode. Because I'm almost 100% positive that he would not have been in a slinky outfit trying to get on the bar. I'm just saying. I mean, I could be wrong.
Maybe he puts on a tuxedo and
maybe.
tries to woo the ladies.
That could be. I don't even know. But that was the original idea, and of course they rewrote the scenes for Maggie. And there was some note somewhere that Wade was not even an idea. Like they weren't even going to use Wade as that character, so it wasn't going to be Wade dressed up slinky, in a little slinky dress either. So they just automatically, went from, oh, well, John Reese isn't with us anymore. Let's just rewrite it for Maggie. That was it.
There you go.
There was a little bit more with the scene with the salesman who was going to give her that dress. Like she saw the dress on the mannequin. There was going to be a scene where she goes inside and the guy tries to sell it to her and she gets all sexy up on him, but then ends up killing him just like she did the other people. The doctor actually referred to the bar in the hotel, Diggs Bar, as a gay bar, which is interesting. That'll come up a little bit later.
Yes, I've got something in the notes about that.
Yeah. And then there was a missing line, which sort of explains things. If you watch very carefully in the episode, when they bring Wade out near the end, after they used her as the bargaining chip, if you look at Wade's arm, she doesn't have the donor tag anymore. And there was a line where the doctor and Quinn were talking where he says, all right, fine, I'll bring you Maggie, and you get give us Wade, and you take these chips out. So there was a line about that they cut from the final episode, but it was supposed to, explain why she doesn't have the donor chip and why they were able to go to the next world and they didn't have to worry about the chips anymore.
And if this doesn't work?
We take her with us.
Are you crazy?
Wade, I know you've got issues with Maggie.
No, this doesn't have anything to do with her. That thing will attack either one of you first chance it gets. She's not your responsibility. She was not dragged into this like we were. She insisted on coming.
You would have done the same in her position.
Look, you've got two people here who rate a little higher on your scale of responsibility. And we both vote to leave her here.
Is that right, Rembrandt?
I know it's not an easy decision, Cubo.
We're not leaving without her.
You've got a thing for her, don't you?
That's ridiculous.
Is it?
All right, well, let's get into our discussion of the breeder. We start off in some sort of rainforest world, and these gooey face sucker things jumping at them.
Right.
Now, we don't spend a lot of time here, so we don't really know too much about these things beyond what happens to Maggie.
Well, yeah, and they only spent 5 minutes there too, they said.
And it makes you wonder if there's other humans on that planet or other mammals or something that these gooey face suckers attack. Like,
Right.
It seems like this is their thing, is that they need to get themselves a host in order
Yes.
to reproduce, right?
That's what I was thinking, yep.
But it lays an egg or something
Something.
in Maggie's stomach. Now, this episode just goes crazy.
It does.
I can't say I liked it.
Yeah, when I was watching this, the only thing I could think of was that this just reminded me of like watching like a really bad B movie. The storyline, the ideas, and I don't know, the effects of the creatures. I was just like, oh, this is just so bad.
I think the best effect of it all was probably the eyes.
Yeah, the eyes was pretty good.
But yeah, everything else was just schlock horror, pretty much.
Oh yeah, like the green ooze coming out of the mouth. I was like, oh, that's just disgusting. What the heck? And then like the actual creature when it comes out of their mouth, it's like, I don't know. It just to me it just felt like so low budget.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I'm a big fan of old films that use practical effects.
Right.
It's a terrible conceit to begin with.
I do think, yeah, the practical effects I think were better than if they had tried to use CG to have something coming out of her mouth, because who knows how that would have gone. Okay, and then this thing here, I had not noticed until I looked at another review who mentioned it, and you got to go back and watch it if you had not seen this. But in the beginning, when they're leaving that tropical face sucker world, they all jump off screen in order to get into the vortex. They jump off screen and then they cut to this, the shot of the vortex, just sliding through the vortex. If you watch, when Quinn goes to jump, he jumps, but he doesn't quite jump all the way off screen. So he lands on the ground and you could see him just walking off the side of the screen. So he just, when he jumped, he just did not jump far enough so you could see him land, and it was very funny. It was very funny.
I'm going to have to go back and watch that.
Yeah.
I think it's the thing that we're talking about, David Peckinpah.
Right.
Just get the shot. I don't care if it works or not. We'll just go
Exactly.
with it.
Yeah.
We're not going to spend the money to do another take.
Right.
But, the episode goes on. Like I said, I really enjoyed the creepy looking eyes with that weird red lightning shooting across them, and the face bulging was a bit much when Maggie wakes up. They're in this hospital, right? Apparently Maggie wakes up and she crashes through an air vent, and then they turn around and they're like, oh my god, where's Maggie? I'm like, what, you didn't hear her smash through that air vent?
Right.
And then later on she breaks a dude's arm.
Yes.
And there is no sound effect.
Maybe there's something about this world that sound does not travel.
I mean, the first time about the air vent, I was like, all right, whatever.
Right.
She didn't make a sound smashing through that thing. But then the arm break, I was like, there had to be a sound effect there. And now I'm thinking, is there something up with like the way Netflix has rendered this file out or something?
Yeah, I saw that. So I went ahead and like, I've been watching these sometimes at school also on my lunch. And so I had that up and I checked it specifically. And on the DVD, there's no sound effect either. Nothing. It's like,
It's
wow.
so weird. Because without a sound effect, it clearly looks like a fake arm that she bends up.
Yes.
It's just terrible.
It would be so easy just to put a sound effect in there, even when they were doing the hospital thing where she crashes through the vent, just have someone in the background just like trip over something, make some kind of noise, something.
So yeah, I don't know what they were thinking if they didn't do a proper sound mix on this episode, because it was just terrible without it.
Just cutting corners, get it done. The basic episode is there. Probably thinking you get the idea. She broke her arm. Whatever, move on. But speaking of that guy, did you know who that guy, the guy that she broke his arm? You know who that was?
No.
This is one of those things. It's not like a big guest star, and it's definitely not billed as a guest star. But when I saw him, I was like, oh my god, that's him. I don't know if you ever watched this show. That guy was Vance Duke. Vance Duke, along with Coy Duke, are cousins of Bo and Luke Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard. You ever watch that show?
I've seen a few episodes. I couldn't say
Okay.
I've religiously watched it.
Well, see, I did back in the day. It was like, oh, that was my thing. In fact, me and my friend, his father used to work a lot on cars at their house, and they always had cars up on blocks and things like that. And we would always slide across the hood and jump in through the windows, and we would, play act all the time as the Duke boys. In the, I think it was like the third season or something like that, there was a contract dispute because Tom Wopat and Bo Schneider wanted more of the royalties from the sales of Dukes of Hazzard merchandise, and they could not agree to terms, so they did not film the third season. They said, we're not going to do it. You're going to do it without us. And so they hired two guys, this man here and another guy who kind of looked like Bo and Luke. And they said that they were their cousins, Coy and Vance, who had never been mentioned before, but came back to help on the farm while Bo and Luke went off to race in NASCAR.
Wow.
It was a terrible season. People hated them, because they didn't rewrite scripts. These characters were basically the same as Bo and Luke, just different people playing them, And so it was a pretty bad season. Eventually, they came to a solution, and Tom Wopat and Bo Schneider came back, and the other guys left. But yeah, this is the guy that played basically, the copy of Luke Duke.
There
you go.
I love it.
Yep.
Great bit of trivia. Fortunately enough, on this world, it's like super medically advanced. So
Right.
They can get like good care for Maggie. But that doesn't even matter because she escaped. But there's this whole side plot about how people under 25 have to be mandatory organ donors. So Quinn and Wade get strapped with this organ donor thing on their arm. And pretty much it means that if someone who's like really important or, a real high up politician or someone needs an organ, then they can just call on a random young person who is compatible.
Yes.
And they need to give up that organ, whether or not they need it to live or whatever. It can kill them.
It reminded me a little bit with the devices on their wrist or their arm there of Logan's Run. How when it lit up, that was your time. You had to go in for renewal.
Yeah, good call. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a harsh conceit, really, isn't it?
It is. Later on, it comes up, with Remy and Quinn, this whole thing about the organ donors, like, why don't they fight back? And it evolves into this discussion between the two of them. Like, Remy's not happy about it. He's saying, I've been around oppression, and this is, you don't understand because you grew up in a whole different type of world than I did. And like that whole discussion there, I thought was like, it felt weird to me. Like, it didn't seem like they were really being oppressed so much. Like, I understand they're sort of being forced into it, but it's not quite the same thing as, I'm sure, the oppression that Remy felt growing up, as a young black man in the world.
Yeah, they're trying to link it to something that might be important in our world, and it doesn't really match.
No, it doesn't. When he started talking about it, I was like, really? This seems like this is weird to be talking about. Like, for him to take a stand like that, it just felt very odd to me. And I was like, no, I don't think so. I know they're trying to get some kind of deeper message into this episode that, you know what? This episode is really about oppression, not about breasts. But you know what? I'm sorry. It kind of is.
Oh, man. Yeah, let's just get into it. So this is like a species tribute.
Which I have never seen, but I've seen clips of, and I've seen the trailers of, and when I first saw the episode, I was like, this looks like that movie.
And I like Species. I think it's a pretty cool movie. But this is just, I don't even want to say tribute for this one. This is just a blatant ripoff.
Right.
Because you got Maggie, who is the Species. I mean, in Species, it's like an alien, and, the girl was born an alien. She wasn't like a host of some alien species. But yeah, you got Maggie walking around. She's getting all hot and horny, trying to find the right man. And that's exactly what Species is. She's this alien who was created to look like a human, but she escapes and she's trying to get it on with men so she can procreate. And yeah, man, I mean, they just throw it in your face at every angle. I mean, she's feeling up mannequins.
Right.
And finding sexy dresses. I mean, it's ridiculous. And, they get in this whole thing about how she likes it warm. She's got the hotel room up to 90 on the thermostat. It leads her to health clubs.
Because, they got saunas and hot tubs, things like that.
I really wanted to point out some convenient things. You've got a conveniently placed potted plant.
Right, when she goes into the pool, yep.
Very convenient. And a very conveniently placed frosted glass shower door.
Right, yeah.
And not only is this creature, taking over Maggie's body, but it's also got a sense of modesty and, needs to cover up them breasts while she's naked.
I just don't think that, in the real world, if this happened, the creature would not care. It's like, hey, here we are, let's go.
The whole scene in the bar, I think, is hilarious, because we got Diggs back, and it's like you were saying in the trivia, there was apparently some line in there that had said that the bar was a gay bar. And watching this scene, I was like, is Diggs gay? Diggs has to be gay in this scene.
That's what I was thinking too. There's been a couple times when he's shown up where I thought he might be. There's a couple times I'm like, well, if you go with the stereotypical idea, the descriptions, then yeah, he might be right there, but you're not sure. They don't come out and say it. This one, with the deleted line in there, it definitely makes it seem like, yeah, he likely is. Without it, though, in the episode, she crawls up on the bar, and what he actually says, honey, I'm taken. And then she says, well, you're not what I needed anyway. And then he says, well, I may not be your type, but da-da-da-da-da. So he doesn't come right out and say it, but there is kind of like an underlying tone that, he kind of is not really her type.
And the way they get the exposition from him later, because that's what Diggs is good for.
Well, exactly, yes.
If not exposition. They say, we're looking for this woman. She's like 5'9", she has brown hair. And he's like, yeah, I know that girl. She came in touching up guys' chests.
At least this time it makes sense, though, because he's being questioned. So it makes sense. He doesn't just offer it out of nowhere.
But yeah, she does fill up the dude's chest.
Mm.
And he doesn't take her rejection quite well. So he tries to, I don't know what he was trying to do. Like, if he thought he could just, like, rape her right in the middle of the bar there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he doesn't take it so well when she actually says no.
Yep.
And she just snaps his arm quietly.
Yes. You don't want to cause a distraction. You don't want to, let people know that you're doing it. So that's why she did it.
Yeah. And then, yeah, she's in a health club and she's like killing women for whatever reason because she's got to kill somebody. And there's no repercussions from this. I don't think she's ever going to bring it up, feel bad about having killed a whole bunch of people.
She wasn't herself.
No.
You know what I didn't get was, now I know it's because it gives the doctor some reason to want the creature, but the creature, she said that the doctor said the creature was replicating the DNA of the host, and I was kind of like wondering why would the creature need to replicate the DNA of the host, because it's controlling the host by being in there, so somehow it's attached to Maggie, controlling her actions. But what the replicating the DNA thing, is there a reason why the creature needs to replicate DNA other than making the doctor want that skill?
Yeah, it doesn't quite make sense, because they go on to pretty much refer to it as a symbiote.
Yes, exactly.
A symbiotic relationship. It needs to live inside her. It can take control of her. But ostensibly, it's a parasite. So why would it have to replicate her DNA or anything like that?
Yeah, I thought that was weird. I was like, well, what does that have to do with anything? Like, why? So, yeah, it was another thing just to move the plot along, to make the doctor, turn evil.
And then they build up what this alien thing is doing, because it's, it's taken over her. We know it likes the warm conditions. There's a jacuzzi scene right out of Species. And then she's in a sauna with this dude. And, man, I think he's the worst Sliders actor we've seen in a long time.
Is he worse than the guy in Invasion, though? Is he? He might have been a little better than that, because that guy, like, oh, here come my two twin daughters, you know?
He was hamming it up sufficiently, that guy. I don't know. There was that other guy that they ran into in, like, season 1 who just stopped, and it was the one where the king is back.
Right.
Where Remy was the king, and he stops and just gives them everything for no reason and then walks away.
Yes. There's no shortage of bad extras in Sliders.
And then that cranks it up to another level, because, like, a big, like, tentacle-like thing comes right out of her mouth this time.
Yeah. That was just gross. It just looked bad.
Yeah. Sucking down his throat and stuff. Very phallic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
The other thing I love, too, is that the lady at the gym is giving Maggie a free tour. Because they offer free tours here. But she goes, oh, this is our slow period right now, so, not a lot of people are here. I can show you around. And then later, when Quinn and Remy show up, there's like 100 people in using the gym. And I'm like, wow, this is what it's like in your gym when it's slow.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And they use the yellow pages to look up local gyms. And I was like, whoa,
that was a throwback. Yeah, that was a definite throwback, because I remember using the yellow pages, but like, so I think I probably stopped using like phone books probably around like year 2000, I think it was, because I'm still using them before that. When I moved to Arizona, it was like 97, 98, and I did have phone books then. I didn't even have like a cell phone yet. So yeah, I still use them, but that was like, oh wow, I remember using those.
Yeah, today you just Google it.
Speaking of that, did you notice, speaking of the past, in the beginning of the episode, there was a reference to Back to the Future.
No, I didn't spot it.
They're out on the street before, I think it's before they get arrested, before Quinn and Wade get arrested for the donor chips. If you look in the background, there's a marquee, and it says on the marquee, now showing Back to the Future 4. Yep. I was like,
man, I didn't see it. Man, I am going to go back and I'm going to get a screen grab, and that's going to go up on our Facebook page. I'm a huge Back to the Future fan.
There you go. See, now you gotta rewatch parts of this episode. Aren't you so lucky? You're so lucky.
Get to go back. No. One of my favorite shows of all time, Fringe. They did an episode where they went to funnily enough, a parallel universe.
Right.
And in that parallel universe, they never replaced Eric Stoltz in Back to the Future. So there was a viewing of Back to the Future 1, and the big marquee says, starring Eric Stoltz.
That's cool. Very cool.
I love that. Yes, I'm getting that screen grab. That's amazing. The Doctor, they capture Maggie and they get it back. And the Doctor is like unnecessarily evil all of a sudden. And she just like gets Wade sent away for organ harvesting because apparently she can make $1 million off this symbiote. And of course they have to make a deal with her.
Like you noted here about how she tries to lock Wade up first.
Yeah. And she just gets away. She gets away.
She just skips out like da 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 da. Like there's it's I just was like, whoa, wait, was she trying to stop her? Like, I had to go back and watch it a couple times. I think she was trying to stop her, but no, she just sort of, Wade just saunters out.
Yeah. And they get to a scene later when they're all just standing in the room and the Doctor's like typing away and nobody's saying anything. And I'm like, wow, this is like super awkward because she just tried to kill you earlier.
Exactly.
And they have to like walk off to the side to have a conversation. I'm like, what is going on here? Because this is just weird and awkward.
Now, how did you feel about this whole conversation that Wade and Quinn had where I guess Quinn is feeling guilty about letting the professor die, and Wade says something, and he sort of like goes off a little bit about how every person that's died from the start of the series, he feels responsible for, that she's blaming him for. Like, it felt a little bit manufactured to me. It didn't feel like something that really was going on there.
Yeah, I kind of think it was like they were trying to keep up the continuity of the three of them versus Maggie. So you've got Remy and Wade who are kind of on the side of, if we can't cure her, then we'll just leave her here and we'll keep going. Mm-hmm. And Quinn sort of being like, no, we're not going to leave her here. We'll take her with us. And Wade does that thing again where she's like, oh, because you really like her. And he's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, oh, God, can we stop talking about this?
And this is all after Quinn and Remy had the conversation. And Quinn's like, you know what? If you have an opinion, tell me. I'll listen. And then immediately he's like, no, we're taking her. Forget about it. We're taking her with us. I don't care what you say.
And a rare Quinn-Remy team up there as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Having to go out with the cryogenic freezing guns and they catch Maggie, which was, oh, man, that was her hanging up in the corner of the room there like a spider or something.
I know she has, like her body's pretty much the same, right? Like how can she hang up there in the corner? Like suddenly she has like Spider-Man abilities or something in her fingers.
That's what I was picturing in that first Spider-Man movie, the Sam Raimi one, where they did the close-up of the fingertips and it's got like little spikes on it or something. I was like, seriously? What?
Yep.
But anyway, so she's in the thing and they're trying to draw it out. She had impregnated some guy. I think it was Sauna guy, right?
Right.
and they couldn't save him. He ended up getting ice crystals or something in his blood while they're trying to get the right temperature to draw it out.
Right.
So it was this kind of like razor's edge of, oh my God, will she survive or won't she? And I'm like, well, she's only just joined the show, so she's obviously going to survive.
Right.
But then Quinn goes in there and starts breathing all over her, trying to lure it out of her cryogenically frozen body. Oh man, it was pretty bad line delivery, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's why I chose it for the beginning of the episode. So I'm like, oh come on, how can I not pass up a chance to do that? Yeah, it was not good. And in fact, there was a behind the scenes thing that said that she, Carrie Wurr, could not keep a straight face during that scene, and they had to like do it so many times because it was just so ridiculous. And eventually, you know, Quinn said, all right, we got to get through this because they're getting really, you know, pissed at us because we're wasting time and money. And so just think about anything else besides, besides this. Just think about baseball. Think I'm not even here, and we'll just do it, you know? So it was apparently a very difficult scene to do as well.
I can imagine, because she had to lay there like she was frozen as well, so she couldn't even move.
I know.
Period. But yeah, so the whole plan was like to throw it in an aquarium. A nice warm aquarium. It comes out, and then the doctor comes in, and she grabs it. But it ends up, like, sucking onto her face and going down her throat, right? But they have to leave. The timer has run down. It's time to go. Remy's just like, I listen to the good book. You reap what you sow. And off they go. And I'm like, you reap what you sow. I mean, that's true for her. Like, she was a pretty nasty woman towards the end who tried to kill them. But for all intents and purposes, you are leaving an alien species on this planet to take over. That's not cool, man.
No, I mean, it's not the first time they've done it. Of course, we had the spider wasps that they left behind, you know, we talked about before, to possibly take over that world. And so now they've done it before, but this time it's really blatant. You know, like this world's done. It's doomed.
Not a good ending. Not a good story. Not very well acted. Doesn't look very good.
The ending reminded me a little bit of like a Twilight Zone type episode. Everything seems great, but then suddenly there's that little twist at the end where like, uh-oh, everything's not great. It's messed up. So that's what it reminded me of.
Creature of the Week, not quite working for Sliders.
But is it okay? I mean, I think it's okay once in a while to have an episode where they don't wrap everything up nice and neatly at the end.
It's true.
Because we do that a lot. Everything comes to a nice little, you know, into a nice little package right in the last 5 minutes. It happens a lot in Sliders. So this one where it's like, well, you know what? There's nothing we can do. We got to go. It's like, well, all right, you know. And they could always come back to this world. There is the chance that they could do an episode where they come back to this world since they can store the coordinates. But, you know, we know it's not going to happen. But still, there's a chance. They could try to come back and save it.
Don't have to like it.
Exactly.
And now, another episode of That's Random with Remy.
Look, I've done a lot of things since I started sliding. I'm just not up to robbing graves.
This has been another episode of That's Random with Remy.
All right, so let's get into our second episode today. The episode is titled Stoker.
Stoker? I barely even know her.
It's the oldest joke in the book.
I'll be here all week, folks.
Okay, so this was written by Joseph Anderson and directed by Mr. Jerry O'Connell.
Moving up in the world.
And this originally aired on May 9th, 1997.
If ever you were lonely, you never let on, you never let on. If it was up to you and you only, you'd never be wrong, you'd never be wrong, you'd never be wrong. 'Cause you were falling behind.
Who's there?
You have a beautiful voice.
I'm sorry, I saw the keyboards and I just couldn't. How long have you been watching me?
Since last night.
It's you.
It's been a long time since I've heard a voice like that. I'm looking for a singer for the band. How would you like to audition?
No, I couldn't. I'm traveling now, not staying in one place too long, you know.
Sounds like you're already in a band.
No. I always wanted to be.
Well, the least you could do is come and meet the guys. They've got to hear that voice.
Yeah. I could do that, sure.
We start in a world where Wade has become a fan of a local band called Stoker, fronted by a vampire named Morgan. Wade, becoming more and more infatuated with Stoker, even changing her appearance into more of a rock girl groupie look, meets Morgan when she starts messing around and playing the keyboards on stage and singing, and he convinces her to come and meet the rest of the band, hoping she will join it. Meanwhile, Quinn, Maggie, and Remy, on the hunt for Rickman, dig up a grave supposedly containing Rickman's body, but it turns out to be fake. Indeed, we see that Rickman has been parading around as a reverend of the church, paying off a doctor to find him suitable brain tissue donors. The same doctor, in fact, that has been extracting and storing blood for the band members of Stoker. Elsewhere in the city, the drummer for the band uses his supernatural vampire powers to attack and kill a critic who gave him a bad review. Luckily, a man named Van Elsinger has been following Stoker around, hunting them down, trying to kill vampires and stop their attacks. He enlists Quinn to help kill the vampires, managing to take out a number of them while sleeping in their coffins, but Elsinger gets hurt and tells Quinn to leave him behind to find Morgan. Quinn, Maggie, and Remy are approached by one of the vampires, telling them that they will trade Wade for the timer, having learned about parallel worlds from Wade and wishing to escape to a dimension where they won't be hunted. Our trio heads to the club and a battle ensues against several vampires before Quinn heads off to face Morgan himself, coming at Quinn on a motorcycle. Quinn uses the timer as bait to get Morgan to charge him, slipping out a broken broom handle at the last second and skewering the vampire.
This is what Stoker sounded like back in 1957. But they call themselves the Good Tones. I got recordings of them on 8-track, an LP, few 45s, and some reel-to-reel.
It's the same group.
Yep. I did a frequency match on their voices. It's the same. I found pictures of these guys going all the way back to the Civil War. They've always been musicians. Sometimes they disappeared for years, probably going to some other country. And everywhere they've gone, people have disappeared and died. They took my wife. Her name's Charlotte.
They're serial killers.
Now they're vampires.
Oh, you mean like Dracula?
I don't know the reference.
He's a famous vampire where I come from.
Well, the best bloodsucker around here was named Nixon.
So you're saying vampires really exist?
Where you been? It's been a felony since 1897. Maybe you prefer to call them hematologically challenged.
Why don't the police just take care of them?
They can only do so much. People have to look out for themselves.
Do you know where they took my friend?
Yeah. They've been living in a museum that's been closed for repairs. Come with me. Help me kill them all, and we'll get your friend back.
All right, so just a tiny bit of trivia for this one as well.
Yeah, just a very little bit, and there was a note on it saying that this is one of the few episodes where there wasn't much changed from the original script to the final draft. So basically, nothing really changes the story at all. There's just a lot more with Morgan wanting Wade in the band, so there's a big the conversation went on for a little bit longer, as he tries to convince her to join the band. There's more dialogue after Wade bails out Remy and Maggie. Again, nothing life-changing or story-changing at all, just more, back-and-forth banter. And then finally, the biggest thing, which not even is too big, the ending where Quinn skewers Morgan was a little bit different. He found a thin wire that was laying on the ground, and he stretched it across the alleyway there, wherever they were, so that when Morgan drove towards him, he actually got decapitated instead of skewered. So that's all. That's all we got.
She just said I have to go to him, and then they drove off. That was the last I saw of her.
He slide in 5 hours.
5 hours to find Wade and save her from some vampire?
His name is Morgan, and this guy Van told me that we have to stake him before she makes her first kill.
Why is that?
She takes blood, and she becomes one of them forever.
I don't know, Cubo. We've seen a lot of things. I'm having a hard time with this one.
You come with me. I'll make a believer out of you.
If we get ourselves into all this mess.
She's been feeling pretty bad since Arturo died. Something comes along and makes you feel better, you go with it. She told me she hasn't been having much fun in a while.
Yeah, well, who has?
Now, where's Maggie?
She went down to Skid Row to find you and Rickman.
That could be her.
Whoa, take it easy.
This is the guy that took Wade.
Where is she?
She's with Morgan. He wants to time her. He'll trade you the girl's life for it, okay? Just beat the nightclub in 2 hours. Get off of me.
You got any garlic in that bag?
All right, well, let's get into our discussion of Stoker. All right, so continuing with the Creature of the Week vibe that they've got going here.
Mm-hmm.
Vampires in a band.
We've got zombies, now we have vampires. Why not?
What part of alternate history allows vampires to be real? I don't know.
Yeah, the thing about this episode, Quinn just readily accepts the whole premise here, which in the past would not have happened. Arturo would have had something to say about this, that they're not really vampires, that there's a scientific explanation for all this. But here, without the influence of the professor, it's just, yep, we've got vampires. Well, damn. That's it. They just deal with it. There's no attempt to, like, explain it, like, logically.
I've said it before in previous episodes. This is the way they're going, so we're just going to deal with it.
Yeah, I know. It's just, it's sad because you know that if this came about in the first season or the second season even, there would have been some attempts to explain, you know, how real vampires could exist. Because I think there isn't there a real, like a medical condition where you do crave blood? Like it's not just like a psychological thing or something, like you need it for something. I thought I read about that a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might be hemophilia or something. It's like where you have like low blood iron or something like that.
Right.
So you can kind of crave blood.
Yeah, so I think if this had come about in that, you know, those first couple seasons, they would have made some attempt to sort of, you know, explain that that's what it was. It was just like that, you know, rather than just saying flat out it's magical vampires with supernatural powers that come back from the dead.
We get in this whole thing about how Wade seems hypnotized by the lead singer, Morgan.
Yeah.
You know, even from the get-go, where it's like a bit of a cold open of just slowly zooming in on Wade as she sways back and forward watching the band. And she's just mouthing the lyrics. You know, she knows all the lyrics to the song.
Right.
Even though she probably doesn't know who this band is. You know,
exactly.
They've only just arrived on this world, so she can't be like a huge Stoker fan unless
they've been around since the 50s, right?
Yeah. Yeah, unless Stoker existed on Earth Prime, I don't know.
Right.
I don't get into it, but... And randomly, Tommy Chong is there, standing next to her. And they don't even explain him. Like, they don't even get to him until, like, 20 minutes later.
Yeah. I never knew, like, when I first watched it, I didn't even realize that was him. I was never... I knew about Cheech and Chong, but I've never really watched the movies. I may have seen, like, a scene or two here or there. I'm sure I've seen them, like, on various, like, guest appearances or things like that on TV, but I never really got into them, so I didn't even realize it was Tommy Chong until much, much later.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I mean, not everybody likes Cheech and Chong movies. It's almost as if they're scraping the barrel of guest stars now, really. Definitely. Well, we've got another guest star in here. I don't know if you realized it, talking about scraping the bottom of the barrel. Not that this guy's bad or anything. The drummer for Stoker, he is actually the guitarist for Guns N' Roses. Oh, right.
Yeah, and I didn't know that either. I read that over on earthprime.com. There's one of their episode guides, they have who starred in the episode, and that was in there. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So there's someone else who I don't think he's done much acting either besides that. So, you know?
And not really a guest star, but the guy who was like running around doing all the stuff for them, he was in That 70s Show.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
So I recognized him as well, but that was probably before That 70s Show.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like an early role for him. But we're back on the trail of Rickman, which I actually found interesting. You know, watching it in order as we're doing. We've had like a Rickman episode and then no Rickman, and then Rickman's back and then no Rickman. So that's interesting. You know, so we're back on the heels of of Rickman. And I kind of like how they were trying to track him down, and they sort of got muddled in between of like, these are Rickman victims, but there's a couple other people who've been missing from, they were last seen at Stoker concerts. So they're kind of tracking down the vampires while tracking down Rickman. So that was a pretty cool tie-in. So Rickman's posing as a priest.
Right.
And he's skulking around blood clinics. And as we go into like this blood clinic, you hear someone say that they're selling their blood in order to get Stoker tickets. So it's almost as if like this is a blood bank owned by Stoker. It was like, you know, celebrities do charitable things or something. So in order to like satisfy their bloodlust and appear to be doing something charitable as celebrities,
right,
they have a blood bank.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they've got the most corrupt guy in the world working there.
Well, see, in my mind, I was thinking, well, they must be. I know they're giving away the Stoker tickets, but I wonder, since that doctor is so corrupt, you know, they were probably paying him off too. Maybe Stoker was paying him off for the blood, because I'm sure there's got to be medical like forms to fill out if you're actually going to be taking the blood somewhere, rather than just, you know, oh yeah, it's in the fridge, go grab it.
And at the same time, it seems like they take more than just blood.
Right.
Because when Quinn rocks up there, he pretty much lists off all the stuff that they are accepting at the moment. That was blood or bone marrow or something like that. He gets serious. We don't need any sperm this month, though. He's like, well, I'm not selling it.
We got enough of sperm from last week. We're good this week. So.
Yeah. I'm sure Stoker has a lot of groupies, so they're probably validating that. They get into this whole side thing too about how Maggie has been checking death records on all the worlds as well. And she says, you know, if Rickman's going to die on one of these worlds, I'm going to know about it. And they track down a dead person who was buried.
Right.
So they're like, oh, let's go and dig him up, and we'll see if the timer was buried with him and stuff. That storyline, correct me if I'm wrong, goes nowhere.
Yeah, it pretty much goes nowhere. They dig him up and they discover it's not him. It's not really Rickman. So that was the end of that.
Yeah,
I think.
Did Rickman set that up? Like, did he fake his own death or something and try and throw them off or something? Or was it just happenstance that someone named Rickman died there?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, admittedly, I don't remember this, but again, I read a couple other reviews, and someone had said, I think it was on earthprime.com, about how there was some kind of, I don't remember this, maybe you remember this, something about there was an identifying mark on Rickman from the army or something like that that would tell Maggie for sure it was him. Do you remember that?
No, I guess maybe I wasn't paying that close attention to this episode.
I know. And so, like, I read that after I had seen the episode, and I was like, really? And I meant to go back and double check for that, but there was some line about that, I guess, apparently. So I think that he just, from what I gathered, he had killed someone and buried that person in place of him. I don't know if he was thinking that they would be checking death records or what. In one of the messages in Time, they said something about, perhaps, you know, that Rickman that was buried was just a double, you know, because we haven't seen any Rickman doubles, but it could have been because there's doubles of everyone, you know, on the world. So it could have been, it could have been a Rickman double as well. I don't know. I'd have to go back and double check that to see if there was that line about some kind of identifying mark or something being on the real Rickman. But I don't know. That was their reasoning. So I assume it was in there because their reviews are really pretty good and pretty detailed. So I'm not sure myself.
Yeah, but he does have a creepy scene in this episode when, because he's posing as a priest and he goes to see a coma patient.
Right.
And steals his brain juice. Mm-hmm. And then he leans in and he whispers to him, you know, don't go dying on me. Or I'll come back and see you perform my slide.
Yes.
He's like, oh man, yeah, you are creepy.
Yeah, he's definitely, I think he's definitely better than Roger Daltrey was. He definitely plays the creep factor up a lot better.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, it's more menacing, I think.
But, of course, Wade is checking out Stoker. Yeah, she's happy to go and check out Stoker while they're trying to gather information. And she happens upon a keyboard and decides to have a bit of a sing. So, you know, she's also a pretty good singer along with being Computer Whiz, Candy Striper, and Waitress.
Yeah.
and she does. I like the song.
Yeah, she sang great. Yeah. Sang great. And for the past 2.5 years, she's sung so much with Remy and identified with Remy's musical career so much that it's just natural that she would be singing in this episode. You know? It's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm in the Navy. Oh, I'm the singer. Did you know that?
Never told you before.
She did a good job, though. She is a good singer. You know, definitely. She carry a tune quite well.
This is really just a plot contrivance to get her even more associated with Stoker. This is where the vampire hunter comes into it, Tommy Chong.
Right.
And I find this interesting here because I heard it Van Helsinger.
I did too when I first watched it. And then watching it this time with the captions and everything, it's written out as Elsinger, not with the H, Elsinger with just the E. I checked IMDb to be sure, and it's listed as Elsinger there too. I don't know, like obviously they're talking about, you know, Dracula,
Van Helsing,
the characters. Why? Who? This was written by what's his name? This is written by Joseph Anderson, or Anderson. He did a couple other really bad rip. He did the one with the Time Machine ripoff, right? Underground.
Yeah,
I
think so. Yeah.
So you know, he's here. He is ripping off another you know, classic novel. Maybe he thought that would maybe throw people off a little bit if he changes it to officially Elsinger, you know. But yeah, Elsinger is actually what they had on there. Even though Helsinger would have made much more sense. On this world, there was no Dracula. The weird thing is the characters are named after, you know, people from the book. Harker, Renfield, Mina. It's like all these are characters in the original Dracula novel, but there's no Dracula in this world. It's just very big coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that his first name is Van. Like he goes on to just call him Van, and I'm pretty sure Van Helsing was the surname of the character. Right?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not saying I know what his first name is, but Van Helsing is the full last name.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, but that's his full name, Van Elsinger, apparently.
Yes.
So. Mm-hmm. Whatever. It's not even that Quinn doesn't call that out.
Right, yeah.
Because it's so obvious.
It's not like, hey, on my world.
So Quinn and Van are off to fight the vampires, while Wade has officially joined the band as the new lead singer. Mm-hmm. Of course, Remy and Maggie are arrested for grave robbery.
Right.
And lucky that Quinn didn't stick around for that, or else he would have never run into Van Helsing.
Exactly. Yeah, Maggie and Remy didn't have a whole lot to do this episode, really.
Yeah, even after they busted out of prison, they just kind of showed up where everybody was.
I'll tell you, though, I was impressed. I was impressed with Maggie's performance this episode because she actually managed to keep her clothes on.
Yes, this is true.
So kudos.
You didn't have to worry about it.
If they had made her the one liking the band, that would have been a whole nother thing. If she had been the one liking the band, she would have had like the fishnets on, the halter top, you know. Missed opportunities. What happened, Sliders?
I've been calling for my Punk Wade fanfic, so
this
is getting a bit closer. This is official Sliders canon, so not fanfic, but
exactly.
Why not?
Right.
Yeah, it's just the whole thing, like, you know, how it all came together. You know, they're ready to go and fight vampires, and Van tells this whole story about his wife, and it seems like they killed his wife like ages ago.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And when they're in there and they're gonna kill all the vampires, he turns to Quinn and goes, "Hey, if you see my wife, let me know. I want to be the one to kill her." I'm like, how the hell would Quinn know what your wife looks like from that story that you told that she was dead?
Exactly.
So,
that's true. I did not think of that.
Yeah. And of course, she pops up at some point and he kills her. And that's
Right.
it. And then he dies too. So I'm like, what? I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of quick. It's like, oh, here he is, you know, special guest star, you know, big hero. Boom, he's down, gone. The Sliders themselves, like, you know, shooting ahead here. You know, Quinn and you know, the rest of the gang, they're pretty good at vampire hunting, apparently. Like, they do very well with those crossbows and whatnot. And it's like, Van Elsinger, who's been doing this his whole life, dies pretty quickly. But then, again, these new guys who have no experience hunting vampires, they get through just fine.
It was also more than obvious that they were feeding blood to Wade. Because every scene she is in, they've given her some glass of red liquid that she's just sucking it down.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, I see what's going on here. You're preparing her to become a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Even that, the big showdown between Quinn and Morgan, where he just pulls up a stick and stakes him.
I know, it was so anticlimactic.
Yeah, and then Wade's just like, oh, it must have been a spell. Oh, okay. All forgiven.
Yeah, my thing was, like, Morgan has been alive since the 50s or whatever, surviving, hunters all that time. And in the end, he's dumb enough to just ride on a motorcycle very quickly towards, some guy. Like, that's the best way to take that guy down, just riding on a motorcycle towards him. It seems like he'd be a lot smarter to have survived all this time, and finally he's outdone by just this kid who shows up and has a stick. It's just, I thought it was like a bad way to have him go out.
Yeah, I almost wish that he'd taken his head off, like we were saying in the trivia there.
Right,
that would have been like way better, I guess, like a better way for Quinn to have tricked him into getting killed.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And it's like, he so many things he could have done, like gotten off the bike and said, all right, well, you got the timer, give me the timer, walked up to him, flown with his vampire powers and grab him. It was just, the ending was a little bit off for me.
And continuing on with how Remy and Maggie had nothing to do. I mean, they managed to weasel Remy back into the story to go and kill vampires. But they send Maggie to the blood bank to deal with Rickman. And even that's anticlimactic. He gets a shot off on her and then just disappears.
And it didn't make sense to me. Maggie, she's a soldier, right? But she goes into this whole thing with no weapons. She just walks up with her bad self, and like follows him in the back there and just confronts him. Like you would come prepared. If you were a soldier, you would come prepared, to take down this guy. Not with just your bare hands. Not with what you might find around you, but you'd have some kind of concealed weapon.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I love the way that they get around the use of blood in this episode, because that lackey guy, that 70s show guy, has like a box of blood. And he gets shot. But he gets shot through the box of blood, and the blood comes out of the box.
Right.
So it's like, we're not showing you that he got shot and is bleeding. That's just the blood in the box that's pouring out.
There's actually a message in time about that. But concerning that guy, wasn't that guy? I thought that guy was a vampire too.
No, yeah, I took him as like their lackey who did
so
stuff
no
with
vampire.
Him, or
okay.
what they call it, a familiar.
Right.
But
just some guy they hired in the city or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. They're kind of unclear about the vampire lore here, because there is that whole scene where the drummer goes to kill the critic. And he does that in like broad daylight. You're like, it's always vampire lore that vampires don't go out in the sun.
Right, and there's a message in time about that too.
And he gets, oh man, this is like a bad pun at the end, because he zaps Remy at the very end.
Oh god,
with a quote unquote electric guitar.
Right,
and I'm like, ugh. Seriously?
Yeah, that's powers we haven't seen before either. Able to like shoot electricity from things, Well, not even that, but then like what you said, when he went out to kill that critic, he apparently has like telekinesis and can like lock the doors, and he can start the car and push the pedal, all with his mind to cause the guy to crash.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit much. I mean, this goes back to the episode with the magic, with the ancient Mallory clan or whatever. It's like you just got to accept that it's magic. There's no scientific explanations. It's just magic. That's the way it is. Vampires can do these things. Deal with it.
I don't know. It's a disappointing episode, and I hate to say that, because it is directed by Jerry O'Connell. He's
right.
We said the same thing about John Rhys Davies. Obviously he wanted to step up in his role into writer or possibly producer, because he believes in the show. So here you've got another main star of the show who is stepping up into a role of directing an episode, and they give him this to do.
Yeah, I mean it's not really his fault. It's like he's limited by what they gave him. So
yeah.
I mean, even like the you know, if you like when they go to fight the vampires, Van Helsing is like cutting off the head of one of them, and it looks like afternoon. You know, it's an afternoon in the park, and he's beheading him behind the tree there. You know, and then as they go in to fight the vampires, suddenly it's like dusk. You know, it's like nighttime almost all of a sudden. And so I was thinking, why didn't they attack earlier during the daylight when no one would be waking up, you know, because they're vampires. And it's just, that's the time that they had available to shoot. So they had to shoot it, you know, story be damned.
Yeah, it is kind of a downside. Like, why is so much of this episode during the day?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for a vampire story, it should be mostly at night for tone.
Well, yeah, of course.
You know? So, I don't know. I didn't really like this episode that much.
Nah, I just, you know, like I said, I like my Wade, you know, just little pixie Wade, you know, cute girl next door, not all gothed up or punked up, you know. That's your milieu there.
I'm sorry. It must have been some kind of spell.
Just my luck, huh? I finally really like somebody and he turns out to be a vampire.
It's all right.
No, just, I want to explain, you know. When I was up there, when I was with those guys up there with the band, I felt like I really belonged. Like I wasn't alone.
You're not alone. You've got us.
Do I?
Always. I'm sorry if I haven't made that clear lately.
Maybe I just need to hear it more often than some people.
All right, well, let's get into some messages in time.
All right, so we'll start with Stoker here. So people said they really liked the whole thing that Van Helsing said about how the spirit for these vampires was trapped in the body, and that's why it needed blood to survive. I guess it was an attempt at a scientific explanation, but still not quite. It's, you know, with the whole thing about the spirit, that gets into other realms other than science. So,
Yeah.
But people liked it. They thought it was a good explanation. They thought Morgan's death was good, but how come the other vampires didn't die the same way? Because he like sort of shriveled into like a skeleton while they just sort of like just died. You know, they sort of just like collapsed back down.
Yeah, no continuity in the lore here, really.
Right. So Van Helsing says they need to decapitate a vampire to really kill it, but they didn't decapitate anyone else besides that first one. They just stabbed the rest of them.
And they didn't decapitate Morgan at the end.
Right. And you think, you know, if they had gone with the original trivia, you know, like we talked about, then they would have decapitated him. Since he was the lead vampire, that would have been good. But, you know, Wade, when Wade says she finally likes someone at the end there, she goes, finally likes someone. He turns out to be a vampire. It's like, well, you've had your fair share of guys, Wade. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
You
There's
know?
the prince on that one world. And
yeah, the prince. There's Ryan. There's Obsession guy. You know, there's been a number of guys that have liked you, and you've liked them. So come on, you know.
Discounting them already. Forgotten
exactly.
about Ryan. He's gone. He's forgotten.
Yeah, he's with Michelle on that world. And old news now, I guess. They were wondering, where was Rickman getting all the cash to pay off this doctor from? You know, did he steal it from people or what? So
Maybe he mugs people after he steals their brain juice.
That could be. It'd be very easy, you know. Let's see. They thought that the shot of the vampires hanging from the ceiling was good, even though it had been done in the Lost Boys. They said it's still a cool shot. You know, good job on Jerry for getting that shot.
I can agree.
Yeah, and here's that what I was telling you about. They liked the lackey getting shot holding the blood box because it's something they don't see too often, I guess, is what they were saying. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I don't watch that many movies like that to know.
Well, like I said, I just thought it was funny because it was obviously getting around being able to see someone shot and bleeding, quote unquote,
exactly,
on primetime TV.
Someone tried to defend the vampires by saying, you know what? The reason why vampires can go out in sunlight is because, you know, infinite dimensions, because there's infinite possibilities. So on here, vampires can just go out during the sunlight. And then people replied to it saying, well, you know, it all depends on what vampire movie you go by if you're going to use lore. Because the Lost Boys, I guess the vampires went out in the sunlight, which I don't really remember. It's been a long time since I've seen it. But the vampires, I guess, could go out in the sunlight. Interview with a vampire, they weren't bothered by the sunlight. So, I don't know. I guess it depends on what you're going with. what you're using.
Those movies, they still bring up the sunlight
Do
as
they?
being like an anti-thing.
Oh, okay.
But they never really went into like, oh, direct sunlight, and now I'm burning up and dying.
Right,
It's more like, I don't like being in the sun.
Someone said, this politically correct person was like, vampires being outlawed sounds like discrimination. We need a lawsuit or something. And I don't know if they were being serious or not, but I was like, oh, okay, we'll throw that in there. They liked that the Sliders seemed more like friends again in this episode. They weren't at each other's throats, so there wasn't Maggie and Wade, hating on each other this episode, really.
I don't know. Still that little bit in the hotel room where Maggie had to go at her for going out and partying.
Yeah, there is a little bit there now. Yeah, a lot of people did not like Tommy Chong. They're like, that was lame. What the heck?
I know. When they were sitting in the car listening to the 50s Stoker music,
yes,
I was really waiting for him to be like, we're not even driving, man. We're parked.
Oh, God. Other people were glad it wasn't just a Lost Boys ripoff. Someone said, this was not as scary as the preview suggested. I guess the preview played it up more to be like a jumpy, scary episode.
Yeah, that's what trailers and previews do.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then they said, why did they dig up Rickman? Because it could have been his double, or they could have checked records for when the guy was buried. It was just there was no need to really do that. So, like you said, that really went nowhere.
Yeah. Went in, then went nowhere.
All right, so then we got messages in time for Breeder. And so for this one, of course, everyone's saying what we said. It's a Species ripoff, totally a Species ripoff. That was, all over the place on those boards back in 97. The one thing that someone brought up, which I agree with and I never thought about before, was someone said, the Sliders interfered with the arrest of that woman. But why? Why? Like, they really shouldn't have. If you were in a foreign country and saw someone being arrested and you didn't understand the language, didn't know what was going on, someone's being arrested, not beaten up or, physically hurt, would you go and interfere with those police? I don't think you would. I wouldn't.
No.
So this is a very good point. Like, why do they suddenly just get involved here? Because they should. It's the same exact thing. It's a very good point. They just should say, hey, okay, fine, whatever. I mean, if the police were beating the woman, like, mercilessly, then I could understand. But in this case, you don't know these rules yet in this world. Let the person be arrested. You have no idea.
Yeah, for all you know, they have broken the law and are being justly arrested.
Now, we didn't talk about this either, but because this was just weird. They left the timer in the hotel room. Since when do they do that?
Yeah. Dropping the ball, Remy.
I know. It's like, where's the timer? I left it. Well, you should do it. I left it in the hotel room.
I left it in the hotel room.
Exactly. It's like, what? They've never done that before. It's just to, try to put the timer, like the timer in peril or the slide in peril, plot contrivance that they always do. Anyway, so that was
some time having to go back to the hotel again.
Exactly. So on the boards here, which I had not noticed until I started looking up stuff about this episode. And I forget, was this one of the first episodes with Maggie, like in order? Like, did they show it out of order a little bit?
Yeah, these ones were a little bit chopped and changed. So okay. I think this was an earlier episode.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah. Because on the boards, they refer to Carrie Woorer as Woo-Woo, which some people spell W-O-O-W-O-O, or some people say it W-U-W-U, maybe based on her name. But they don't refer to her at this point by her character name too much or by her real name. They just say Woo-Woo. And someone said, someone on the board said, it really says something about this character that we don't refer to her by name, but instead call her Woo-Woo or Woo. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, I guess it does, because she's at this point, she's there just for the sex appeal, and that's what this other person said. And they actually gave a good explanation, and I copied it here. This poster said, she's there to add sex appeal, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But they shouldn't have written the sex object character as an army captain because it conflicts too much with the sex object role. There's lots of other ways they could have introduced that type of character. And of course, they really screwed themselves big time when she was introduced as a replacement for a long-standing character that people liked, a character with a brain who was played by a much better actor. So
Yeah.
she's in a hard position. She really is.
And especially for what they make her do.
Yes, exactly.
She can only do so much as the script gives her, even though a lot of the time her line deliveries aren't excellent either. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Another person said that Maggie wearing tube tops is really out of character. They should, she should still be in fatigues and military jumpsuits, which I kind of understand what they're saying, but I mean, they change outfits when they go from world to world. So we don't know that much about Maggie. Maybe she liked wearing tube tops in her, in her off-duty times, perhaps. Maybe that's, maybe her husband, really enjoyed that. And, I don't
She's still a good-looking woman. Why
Well,
not?
yeah, there you go. They said the only purpose of this episode was to have Carrie slink around half-dressed. And that's not why they watch Sliders. They watch it for interesting characters, for sci-fi and adventure, not cheap titillation. Someone said, this was pretty good, it was gross, corny, ridiculous, poorly written, poorly executed, sadly amusing at times, and a waste of 48 minutes. The commercials were a relief. Like, okay, there you go.
I mean, I pretty much said the same thing, but I don't know if I say that about commercials.
Right. There was a behind the scenes thing with Clavant also, and he also said that the one of the low points for him was that whole discussion about oppression with Jerry O'Connell in the episode. He says it was a low point for Sliders.
Yeah.
And then finally, someone mentioned this is more about Fox maybe than Sliders, but in general, these two quotes that they put in there, I think sum it all up so far. These episodes of Sliders. Jay Sherman, the critic, remember that show?
Yeah.
Jay Sherman, the critic, says, Fox, give us 10 minutes and we'll show you an ass. And then we have Marge Simpson from The Simpsons who says, Fox turned into a hardcore sex channel so gradually I never noticed it.
Yes.
And they both fit. So there you go.
Very funny. All right, so let's get into some messages from Earth Prime.
All right, we've got on the forums over at sliders.tv, we've got a thread over there you can check out. Intangible, I guess is his name. He says that he's looking forward to the Soul Survivors podcast, our last one. He says one of his favorite episodes, honestly, just for the way Sabrina knocks it out of the park. I guess he's referring to the emotional scene she has, about losing the sliders to Maggie. Our reactions, like I said, always posting really good, in-depth reviews of our podcasts, as well as the episode himself. Hated Exodus, really hated Exodus. Not just because of, Arturo's death, but there's a lot of other things that he mentions there. Plot holes, the story itself, the execution, the portrayal of these characters that we knew but weren't acting quite like their normal selves. So he was definitely not a fan of Exodus at all. And we had our problems with it, but for the most part, it's like, well, to us, it wasn't the worst thing in the world.
And of course, we threw out there about Exodus Excised and how that really tightens it up and gets rid of a lot of unnecessary junk.
So, I mean, you could read what he says about all the things we've been talking about. And like I've said before, he's got very in-depth reviews. It's not just like a simple, oh yeah, that was a cool episode. Like, it's very well reasoned and everything. So you check those out. I had said in the one episode that he should do a podcast himself, and he said to that effect, he said, you know what I have to say about Sliders is probably best summed up in the scripts that he has written about Sliders. He's written, I think there's been 2 so far, maybe 3, and there's going to be another 1 or 2. The one that I first read by him is called Slide Effects, and basically, if you've not read his script, Slide Effects, if you don't know anything about it, you can search it up. It is a way that they could have rebooted Sliders after season 5 that kept everything in continuity from season 3, 4, and 5, but it reboots the show back to the season 1 and 2 concept. So it was a really interesting way of doing it, and I really liked the way that the script was written, the story that he came up with. So it's something worth checking out if you can find it.
You've really been talking these up. I'm gonna have to go and check these out.
You gotta check them out. They're really well done, really well done. And like I said, this Slide Effects was the first one that I read. I think it's the first one he did, and it does it for those people who liked seasons 3, 4, and 5 a lot. It keeps those things in canon, but at the same time, it takes us back to where the show should have been the whole time. Back to the season 1 and 2 ideas.
Awesome.
So it's really well done. And in fact, when I was reading it, he has a good grasp on the characters as well. When I'm reading it, the things that the characters are saying, it sounds like those are things the characters would say. They're not just someone doing a fanfic where it doesn't sound like the character. These sound like the actual characters that we know and love. All right. And then finally, we have Russian Cabbie Lottery fan who thanks Cory for yet another Remy impersonation, which cements his opinion that Cory is the best Rembrandt impersonator of all time.
I don't know about that. I think Rembrandt is the best Rembrandt impersonator of all time, if I remember. But I guess I could be right up there.
Yes, outside of Rembrandt himself, all you need is a ruffled tux, some Jerry curl in the hair. You're set, man.
Yeah, I could sing "Tears in My Fro," but I don't know. I got tears in my fro.
Oh,
that's all you're getting.
Now someone needs to remix that. Do an auto tune the podcast right there.
Go for it, cue ball. All right. Next week we will be discussing 3 episodes.
3
to round out season 3. A big 3-episode spectacular.
Yes.
And we will be discussing Slither, Dino Slide, and This Slide of Paradise.
3 great episodes to end the season with.
And this will be the last time we're doing 3. Because we're even-numbered seasons from here on out.
Okay, well, that's it for this episode of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast and follow the show on Twitter at rewatchpod. You can also visit our webpage at rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com, which has some of our favorite links there, such as dimensionofcontinuity.com, earthprime.com, and the active forum over at sliders.tv.
And remember, you can always write us an email or record a voice message and send it to therewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. If you do, I promise to do more Rembrandt impersonation.
How can you resist now?
So do it, and we'd love you. All right, well, thank you for joining me, Tom.
Yep.
So I will just say, until next time, I may not be your type, but I like your style, girl.
We gotta slide.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with NBC Universal, St. Clair Entertainment, Fox, or Sci-Fi Channel. The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes, as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Copyright 2015, The Rewatch Podcast.